The Dead Sea Scrolls, in the narrow sense of Qumran Caves scrolls, are a collection of some 981 different texts discovered between 1946 and 1956 in 11 caves in the immediate vicinity of the ancient settlement at Khirbet Qumran in the West Bank. The caves are located about 2 kilometers inland from the northwest shore of the Dead Sea, from which they derive their name. The consensus is that the Qumran Caves scrolls date from the last 3 centuries BCE and the 1st century CE. Bronze coins found at the same sites form a series beginning with John Hyrcanus and continuing until the First Jewish-Roman War, supporting the radiocarbon and paleographic dating of the scrolls. Manuscripts from additional Judean desert sites go back as far as the 8th century BCE to as late as the 11th century CE. The texts are of great historical, religious, and linguistic significance because they include the third oldest known surviving manuscripts of works later included in the Hebrew Bible canon, along with deuterocanonical and extra-biblical manuscripts which preserve evidence of the diversity of religious thought in late Second Temple Judaism. Biblical texts older than the Dead Sea Scrolls has been discovered only in 2 silver scroll-shaped amulets containing portions of the priestly blessing from the Book of Numbers, excavated in Jerusalem at Ketef Hinnom and dated c. 600 BCE. A burnt piece of Leviticus dating from the 6th century CE analyzed in 2015 was found to be the 4th oldest piece of the Torah known to exist. Most of the texts are written in Hebrew, with some in Aramaic, and a few in Greek. If discoveries from the Judean desert are included, Latin and Arabic can be added. Most texts are written on parchment, some on papyrus and one on copper. The scrolls have traditionally been identified with the ancient Jewish sect called the Essenes, although some recent interpretations have challenged this association and argue that the scrolls were penned by priests in Jerusalem, Zadokites or other unknown Jewish groups. Due to the poor condition of some of the scrolls, not all of them have been identified. Those that have been identified can be divided into 3 general groups. Some 40% of them are copies of texts from the Hebrew Bible. Approximately another 30% of them are texts from the Second Temple period which ultimately were not canonized in the Hebrew Bible, like the Book of Enoch, Jubilees, the Book of Tobit, the Wisdom of Sirach, Psalms 152 to 155, etc., and the remaining roughly 30% of them are sectarian manuscripts of previously unknown documents that shed light on the rules and beliefs of a particular group or groups within Greater Judaism, like the Community Rule, the War Scroll, the Pesher on Habakkuk and the Rule of the Blessing. Discovery. The Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in a series of 11 caves around the site known as Wadi Qumran near the Dead Sea in the West Bank between 1946 and 1956 by Bedouin shepherds and a team of archaeologists. Initial discovery. The initial discovery, by Bedouin shepherd Muhammad Edh, his cousin Jammar Muhammad, and Khalil Musa, took place between November 1946 and February 1947. The shepherds discovered 7 scrolls housed in jars in a cave near what is now known as the Qumran site. John C. Trevor reconstructed the story of the scrolls from several interviews with the Bedouin. Edh's cousin noticed the caves, but Edh himself was the first to actually fall into one. He retrieved a handful of scrolls, which Trevor identifies as the Isaiah Scroll, Habakkuk Commentary, and the Community Rule, and took them back to the camp to show to his family. None of the scrolls were destroyed in this process, despite popular rumor. The Bedouin kept the scrolls hanging on a tent pole while they figured out what to do with them, periodically taking them out to show people. At some point during this time, the Community Rule was split in 2. The Bedouin first took the scrolls to a dealer named Ibrahim Ijha in Bethlehem. Ijha returned them, saying they were worthless, after being warned that they might have been stolen from a synagogue. Undaunted, the Bedouin went to a nearby market, where a Syrian Christian offered to buy them. A sheikh joined their conversation and suggested they take the scrolls to Khalil Eskander Shahan Kanda, a cobbler and part-time antiques dealer. The Bedouin and the dealers returned to the site, leaving one scroll with Kanda and selling 3 others to a dealer for £7. The original scrolls continued to change hands after the Bedouin left them in the possession of a third party until her sale could be arranged. In 1947, the original 7 scrolls caught the attention of Dr. John C. Trevor, of the American Schools of Oriental Research, who compared the script in the scrolls to that of the Nash Papyrus, the oldest biblical manuscript then known, and found similarities between them. In March, the 1948 Arab-Israeli War prompted the move of some of the scrolls to Beirut, Lebanon for safekeeping. On the 11th of April 1948, Miller Burroughs, head of the ASOR, announced the discovery of the scrolls in a general press release. Search for the Qumran caves early in September 1948. Metropolitan Bishop Mar Samuel brought some additional scroll fragments that he had acquired to Professor Ovid R. Sellers, the new director of ASOR. By the end of 1948, nearly 2 years after their discovery, scholars had yet to locate the original cave where the fragments had been found. With unrest in the country at that time, no large-scale search could be undertaken safely. Sellers attempted to get the Syrians to assist in the search for the cave, but he was unable to pay their price. In early 1948, the government of Jordan gave permission to the Arab Legion to search the area where the original Qumran cave was thought to be. Consequently, Cave 1 was rediscovered on 28 January 1949 by Belgian United Nations observer Captain Philippe Lippens and Arab Legion Captain Akish El-Zdbn. Qumran Caves rediscovery and new scroll discoveries. The rediscovery of what became known as Cave 1 at Qumran prompted the initial excavation of the site from 15 February to 5 March 1949 by the Jordanian Department of Antiquities led by Gerald Lancaster Harding and Roland de Vaux. The Cave 1 site yielded discoveries of additional Dead Sea Scroll fragments, linen cloth jars, and other artifacts. Excavations of Qumran. In November 1951, Roland de Vaux and his team from the ASOR began a full excavation of Qumran. By February 1952, the Bedouin people had discovered 30 fragments in what was to be designated Cave 2. The discovery of a second cave eventually yielded 300 fragments from 33 manuscripts, including fragments of Jubilees, the Wisdom of Sirach, and Ben Sira written in Hebrew. The following month, on 14 March 1952, the ASOR team discovered a third cave with fragments of Jubilees and the Copper Scroll. Between September and December 1952, the fragments and scrolls of Caves 4, 5, and 6 were subsequently discovered by the ASOR teams, with the monetary value of the scrolls rising as their historical significance was made more public. The Bedouins and the ASOR archaeologists accelerated their search for the scrolls separately in the same general area of Qumran, which was over 1 kilometer in length. Between 1953 and 1956, Roland de Vaux led 4 more archaeological expeditions in the area to uncover scrolls and artifacts. The last cave, Cave 11, was discovered in 1956 and yielded the last fragments to be found in the vicinity of Qumran. Scrolls and fragments. The 972 manuscripts found at Qumran were found primarily in 2 separate formats, as scrolls and as fragments of previous scrolls and texts. In the 4th cave, the fragments were in up to 15,000 pieces. These small fragments created somewhat of a problem for scholars. G.L. Harding, director of the Jordanian Department of Antiquities, began working on piecing the fragments together, and after 40 long years of work he was not finished. The original 7 scrolls from Cave 1 at Qumran are the Great Isaiah Scroll, a second copy of Isaiah, the Community Rule Scroll, the Pesher on Habakkuk, the War Scroll, the Thanksgiving Hymns, and the Genesis Apocryphon. Caves 4A and 4B. Cave 4 was discovered in August 1952, and was excavated from 22 to 29 September 1952 by Gerald Lancaster Harding, Roland de Varks, and Joseph Millick. Cave 4 is actually 2 hand-cut caves, but since the fragments were mixed, they are labeled as 4Q. Cave 4 is the most famous of Qumran caves, both because of its visibility from the Qumran Plateau and its productivity. It is visible from the plateau to the south of the Qumran settlement. It is by far the most productive of all Qumran caves, producing 90% of the Dead Sea Scrolls and scroll fragments, including 9 to 10 copies of Jubilees, along with 21 Tefillin and 7 Mezuzot. Cave 5. Cave 5 was discovered alongside Cave 6 in 1952, shortly after the discovery of Cave 4. Cave 5 produced approximately 25 manuscripts. Cave 6 was discovered alongside Cave 5 in 1952, shortly after the discovery of Cave 4. Cave 6 contained fragments of about 31 manuscripts. List of groups of fragments collected from Wadi Qumran. Cave 6. Cave 7. Cave 7 yielded fewer than 20 fragments of Greek documents, including 7Q2, 7Q5, and a Greek copy of a scroll of Enoch. Cave 7 also produced several inscribed potsherds and jars. Lists of groups of fragments collected from Wadi Qumran. Cave 7. Cave 8. Cave 8, along with Caves 7 and 9, was one of the only caves that are accessible by passing through the settlement at Qumran. Carved into the southern end of the Qumran Plateau, Cave 8 was excavated by archaeologists in 1957. Cave 8 produced 5 fragments: Genesis, Psalms, a Tefillin fragment, a Mezuzah, and a hymn. Cave 8 also produced several Tefillin cases, a box of leather objects, tons of lamps, jars, and the sole of a leather shoe. List of groups of fragments collected from Wadi Qumran. Cave 8. Cave 9. Cave 9, along with Caves 7 and 8, was one of the only caves that are accessible by passing through the settlement at Qumran. Carved into the southern end of the Qumran Plateau, Cave 9 was excavated by archaeologists in 1957. There was only one fragment found in Cave 9. Cave 10. In Cave 10, archaeologists found 2 ostraca with some writing on them, along with an unknown symbol on a grey stone slab. Cave 11. Cave 11 was discovered in 1956 and yielded 21 texts, some of which were quite lengthy. The Temple Scroll, so called because more than half of it pertains to the construction of the Temple of Jerusalem, was found in Cave 11, and is by far the longest scroll. It is now 26.7 feet long. Its original length may have been over 28 feet. The Temple Scroll was regarded by Yigal Yadin as the Torah according to the Essenes. On the other hand, Hartmut Stegemann, a contemporary and friend of Yadin, believed the scroll was not to be regarded as such, but was a document without exceptional significance. Stegemann notes that it is not mentioned or cited in any known Essener writing. Also in Cave 11, an eschatological fragment about the biblical figure Melchizedek was found. Cave 11 also produced a copy of Jubilees. According to former chief editor of the DSS editorial team John Strugnell, there are at least 4 privately owned scrolls from Cave 11 that have not yet been made available for scholars. Among them is a complete Aramaic manuscript of the Book of Enoch. List of groups of fragments collected from Wadi Qumran. Cave 11. Fragments with unknown provenance. Some fragments of scrolls have neither significant archaeological provenance nor records that reveal in which designated Qumran cave area they were found. They are believed to have come from Wadi Qumran caves, but are just as likely to have come from other archaeological sites in the Judean desert area. These fragments have therefore been designated to the temporary X series origin. There has been much debate about the origin of the Dead Sea Scrolls. The dominant theory remains that the scrolls were the product of a sect of Jews living at nearby Qumran called the Essenes. But this theory has come to be challenged by several modern scholars. Qumran Essene theory. The view among scholars, almost universally held until the 1990s, is the Qumran Essene hypothesis, originally posited by Roland Guerin de Vaux and Joseph Tadosh Milik. Though independently, both Eliezer Sukenik and Butrust Somi of St. Mark's Monastery connected scrolls with the Essenes well before any excavations at Qumran. The Qumran Essene theory holds that the scrolls were written by the Essenes, or by another Jewish sectarian group, residing at Khirbet Qumran. They composed the scrolls and ultimately hid them in the nearby caves during the Jewish revolt sometime between 66 and 68 CE. The site of Qumran was destroyed and the scrolls never recovered. A number of arguments are used to support this theory. There are striking similarities between the description of an initiation ceremony of new members in the community rule and descriptions of the Essene initiation ceremony mentioned in the works of Flavius Josephus, a Jewish Roman historian of the Second Temple period. Josephus mentions the Essenes as sharing property among the members of the community, as does the community rule. During the excavation of Khirbet Qumran, 2 inkwells and plastered elements thought to be tables were found, offering evidence that some form of writing was done there. More inkwells were discovered nearby. De Vaux called this area the scriptorium, based upon this discovery. Several Jewish ritual baths were discovered at Qumran, offering evidence of an observant Jewish presence at the site. Qumran sectarian theory. Qumran sectarian theories are variations on the Qumran Essene theory. The main point of departure from the Qumran Essene theory is hesitation to link the Dead Sea Scrolls specifically with the Essenes. Most proponents of the Qumran sectarian theory understand a group of Jews living in or near Qumran to be responsible for the Dead Sea Scrolls, but do not necessarily conclude that the sectarians are Essenes. Christian origin theory. Spanish Jesuit José Callahan Martinez argued in the 1960s that one fragment preserves a portion of text from the New Testament Gospel of Mark chapter 6 verses 52 to 53. This theory was falsified in the year 2000 by paleographic analysis of the particular fragment. In recent years, Robert Eisenman has advanced the theory that some scrolls describe the early Christian community. Eisenman also argued that the careers of James the Just and Paul the Apostle correspond to events recorded in some of these documents. Jerusalem origin theory. Some scholars have argued that the scrolls were the product of Jews living in Jerusalem, who hid the scrolls in the caves near Qumran while fleeing from the Romans during the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 CE. Karl Heinrich Rengstorff first proposed that the Dead Sea Scrolls originated at the library of the Jewish Temple in Jerusalem. Later, Norman Golb suggested that the scrolls were the product of multiple libraries in Jerusalem, and not necessarily the Jerusalem Temple Library. Proponents of the Jerusalem origin theory point to the diversity of thought and handwriting among the scrolls as evidence against a Qumran origin of the scrolls. Several archaeologists have also accepted an origin of the scrolls other than Qumran, including Yizar Hirschfeld and most recently Yitzhak Magen and Yuval Peleg, who all understand the remains of Qumran to be those of a Hasmonean fort that was reused during later periods. Qumran Attribution theory. A specific variation on the Qumran sectarian theory that has gained much recent popularity is the work of Lawrence H. Schiffman, who proposes that the community was led by a group of Zadokite priests. The most important document in support of this view is the Mixat Mars HaTorah, which cites purity laws identical to those attributed in rabbinic writings to the Sadducees. 4QMMT also reproduces a festival calendar that follows Sadducee principles for the dating of certain festival days.